Okay, folks, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, listening in with us, joining. This is an effort to kind of keep connected, keep informed, and keep together during this particular crisis in our country. And this is a way for us to kind of keep in touch and keep learning, which NATRC is so good at. So this is called Let's Talk Horsemanship. And it's going to be kind of a general overview, but it may open up some possibilities for further discussion at some point. So let me go through a couple of things. We'll talk about horsemanship in general. What does that mean? For me, it's pretty simple. It's just how can I set up a good deal for my horse? We have 4 people on here: myself, Sarah Rinne, Jamie Dieterich, and Priscilla Lindsey, and we'll be sharing the webinar, talking about various different topics. I'll introduce all these folks just a little bit real quickly. Priscilla, as a popular horsemanship judge, been around for quite a number of years. She served us in lots of different capacities. She's a centered riding instructor, breeds fine Arabian horses, and is a heck of a competitor and rider herself. Jamie Dieterich is what I consider the cat herder of all things at NATRC. She keeps us organized, rolling, on task, and on focus. She's also a heck of a horsewoman. She's a judge, competitor, ride manager, and volunteer extraordinaire. Sarah Rinne, you guys know, is our executive director. She's a horsemanship judge. She's also a fierce competitor, all-around horsewoman, and she rode her first NATRC ride as a 10-year-old. So she started a little bit earlier than most of the rest of us. She's served almost every function with our sport as well. And then I'm Kim Cowart. I'm a horsemanship judge. I've been a member since, I'm embarrassed to say, since 1985. So that's 35 years of my life that I've been hanging around with you guys. So I'm also a horsemanship judge. I love to ride. And I have a really nice little Arab mare that I got courtesy of Priscilla Lindsey. So we're keeping it in the family here. All right, there's going to be photos you see throughout the webinar. I'm going to give credit to those photographers, Christy Cumberworth and Donna Snyder-Smith. We all know it is very true that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it's a great help to have these photos as tools. Now the topics we're going to kind of go by, you got a list right there in front of you. I won't read off every one of them for you to kind of save time. There's a lot of things to talk about. This is meant to be sort of general. So we're not going to linger a long time on each and every topic. We're trying to keep this thing to around an hour or so we won't linger. The protocol is to use the question and answer feature after each section. And so if you have a particular question, we'll try to address them at that time. Now, if it's a question that requires a lengthy response, then what we might end up doing is like one of us replying back to you by email or phone or something afterwards. So we will try to answer all the questions. They just may not all be answered tonight. Okay, Sarah.
Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. Just a few housekeeping rules. Kim touched on the question and answer section. Make sure you're using that. Try to keep your questions relevant to the topic that we are on at the time. You can ask throughout. We'll be watching the question and answer board for you. So, but we will, if we can fit it into what we're talking about, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll wait till the end of that particular topic to answer those questions. We do have a mix of new members as well as very experienced members, riders in this group. So some of it will be basic for our experienced folks, and some of it will be will not be. So it'll be kind of a mix. I just want people to be aware that we'll be covering a lot of topics tonight. As Kim said, we're trying to keep it somewhat brief on some of the topics. Because equitation will probably take a little bit more time, and you'll probably have more questions around that. But our focus tonight is horsemanship, and we've got some of the gurus in here. I always look to these three folks, to Kim and Jamie and Priscilla, all three of them. They've been mentors to me over the years, and particularly where it has evolved my horsemanship. And, horsemanship is such a critical component that's often overlooked in a lot of sports, a lot of horse sports and distance riding sports. And, as you know, especially for covering long miles, horsemanship is critical. That's all, it all plays into the care of the horse. The way that we ride affects the horse over long miles. So it's really, really important what we do. It requires, control. It requires our ability to control the horse, both their gait, their direction, their speed, everything. We are the ones that are supposed to be in control. And we've all probably been to rides where we have either not been in control or we've seen other people not in control. It happens. But good horsemanship and effective horsemanship allows us to be able to communicate effectively with our horse with minimum effort to be able to get the maximum product or outcome. One of the references that we highlighted was in the early judge's manual. It was defined as to practice the fine art of trail horse care and riding. The prime responsibility of a good horseman is to bring his mount through a ride in the best possible condition and to aid the horse in the best possible recovery. And that's what we do. It's all about our good horsemanship is care of the horse. And that's the bottom line. So grooming, that's usually where we kick it off at our rides. For those of you that are new to our sport, one of the things that we do is a check-in process with both the horsemanship and the veterinary judge. And it's critical, this part is critical because that's where we get the baseline for both you and your horse, primarily the horse. This is where the veterinary judge is going to examine your horse, make sure that your horse is fit to start the ride. And one of the things that horsemanship judges look at, we look at grooming. And a lot of people don't understand why we look at grooming. And a lot of folks assume it means we're looking for show ring grooming and we want a clean horse, but it's a functionally clean horse. And that means making sure that they're clean in all of the tack areas. But at the same time, it's also functionally clean for the veterinarian because the veterinarian is examining their entire body, their legs, and it's really hard for them to do a good exam if the horse is not clean. So part of what we're just looking for is functional clean. We don't want polished hooves. We don't need, fancy braided manes. That doesn't matter for check-in. We're just looking for functional clean. We also tend to observe grooming after the ride, post-ride, and that's just to demonstrate good horse care. Your horse has carried you for a lot of miles. It's critical that you are taking care of your horse, making sure they're clean and comfortable after all of the miles. It's it's the least that you can do. So as a horsemanship judge, one of the things that I look for when I come around and I do stable check, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, I'm just looking to make sure that you've made your horse clean and comfortable. And again, it's not show ring clean, it's about comfort and care. Part of that, and then that includes the feet, making sure that their feet are clean and good hoof care. The other component we'll look at is tack. And one of the common questions that I get as a judge, especially with newer riders, or even in my role, I get a lot of emails from new folks or people that are inquiring about our sport. And one of the first questions is about tack. What kind of saddle, do I have to have a certain kind of saddle? Do I have to have a certain kind of bridle? And, of course, the answer is no. I started in a 50-pound Western saddle that had belonged to my grandfather. And I rode in that for a while. And then I rode in a $100, all-purpose Indo saddle. And, I've evolved over the years and, I've tried a lot of tack. But just like we're the melting pot for breeds of horses and equine, so includes mules, we're also kind of a melting pot for tack. We take all disciplines and we use all types It's just you're required to use some type of saddle and headgear for your horse. So it's pretty open-ended in that regard. The main thing we look for as judges is proper fit, cleanliness, serviceability, making sure that it's in good shape, it's functional, but mainly that it fits properly. Anything that doesn't fit properly either becomes a safety issue or it could become a comfort issue for your horse. So if it's not clean or if it's too tight, it could create rubs on your horse. If it's not functioning properly, you could experience issues on the trail. You could be in the middle of nowhere and have no way to repair it if it's not serviceable. So if we have the opportunity as judges to do a tack check before heading on the trail, we like to take a look mainly for fit and safety and serviceability. Kim's going to talk about the in-hand presentation. I touched on check-in, but now he's going to actually talk about what happens at check-in.
Did we have any questions, Sarah, about tack? Any questions come in?
I don't have anything posted, nope.
Okay. We'll go right into in-hand presentation. I'm not sure how many people are on or experienced riders versus newer people. Those of you that have ridden a number of times know that the first time you're going to see either one of us guys as a judge is you come to the initial vet check, in-hand presentation. That's when we'll first see you. And what I often tell people, that's the first time we see you, first time for you to make a good impression. But right then, your job is to set it up for the horse to succeed and help that horse to do his job for you. Help that horse look good in his gait and his movement for the vet judge. And we do have to think always about the safety and control while we're doing it. One of the things we'll often talk about is keeping two hands on the rope and what to do with the excess rope. So we have a couple of pictures in this slide that are not, the typical perfect picture. We're wanting to show some examples of things that maybe that we're pointing out. So we talk about looping the rope in the hand for safety so that it feeds out versus coiling the rope. Most of us know that, a rope coiled up in your hand as it feeds out could just snatch them fingers pretty hard. So that's one of those safety things that we talk about. When you actually start to move out with your horse, then you want to allow that horse to move as freely as possible. Keep two hands on there, for the control issue. People ask me sometimes, and I'm like, I know you're familiar with your own horse. I know you feel comfortable sometimes with just one hand. You walk around the yard, do whatever. But you are in a strange location probably with a lot of other goings on around you. And if there's one time that horse is likely to bolt, it's probably going to be while you're out there in the middle of a circle with one hand. So, don't be that person that doesn't have enough good control. So keep two hands on there. Give that horse enough lead to move loosely and freely. Again, you're setting that horse up to succeed. The vet judge has to be able to watch the horse, effectively evaluate the horse. And if the horse is hindered by too short a lead or some erratic movement on your part, then it's going to be a lot harder for the vet to assess the horse. And it's definitely in your favor for the vet to get a good evaluation. When you're in the circle, give the horse plenty of lead, but not a ridiculous amount of lead. You can tell in this photo, I don't know, that's probably 12-ish feet or so. We don't mind if you trot the circle yourself. We don't mind if you lunge. A lot of vet judges prefer to see the horses lunge. It kind of takes us out of the way and out of the picture so they can see the horse a little better. But the point is to do the best job for you and the horse. So if that means trotting with them and you feel that froggy, then by all means go ahead and trot along. A lot of us use the smaller circle inside a circle. That also works pretty well. And when I mention not a ridiculously large circle, I say that because, there is an excessive amount there. A little side anecdote, I was working with a really competent vet judge at a ride, and there was a horse and rider came up and the rider was doing really, really, really big circles. Now that's a common way to try to hide a little bit of a lameness issue sometimes. And so the vet judge watched the rider do this huge circles, and the rider came back, and then the vet said, "Now, would you please go out there and give me a much more reasonable circle, because I think I see something with your horse." So it gave the vet an opportunity to see the horse in a reasonable size. A little tip I use, I find a good length of rope that works good for the circles I want with my horse. I tie knots in that rope. And as I go out to the end of the trot and start feeding that line, as soon as my hand hits the first knot, I know that I'm in the size circle I need. So, and that's just a tip. When you trot straight away, you've done your 2 circles and you're trotting back to the vet judge. Focus on that judge as you come straight back. That allows you to come in a straight line, and you're not veering off right, veering off left. And again, you're setting that horse up well so the vet can see and evaluate as well as possible. And the last little comment I had about in-hand stuff, we talk about footwear. And this has been a recent conversation with the judges committee, and we talked about it at the board meeting and stuff. Open-toed, open-heeled, loose footwear of that nature is just inherently unsafe when you're handling a horse. And so we're treating that as a safety issue, and that's exactly what it is. And it's not just a safety issue for the rider's sake, but it is also for the judge's sake. Because a rider that gets stepped on and causes a little bit of commotion, and while the vet judge is in the middle of picking up legs or what have you, can put that vet judge in a little bit of a bind and predicament. So when you come up to see us, have foot covering footwear. If you want to go back to camp and put on your sandals, flip-flops, or whatever, then, by all means do so. But when you're handling your horse and riding your horse, you need to have proper, safe footwear. That's just a reasonable thing to do. Any questions?
Okay, Kim, you have 2 questions that were posted. One of them was from Kristen, and she asked, what would you consider too small of a circle, or is there such a thing?
Hi, Kristen. There is definitely such a thing as too small of a circle. That's one of the surest ways to make your horse look a little off and make it difficult for the vet judge. What is too small? If your horse is leaning the whole time, probably anything less than 8 to 10 foot line is definitely going to incur too small of a circle. But if your horse is in a lean the whole time without any opportunity to kind of straighten up and move at a good gait, then that circle is probably too small.
Okay, the second question, Kim, was from Chrissy. And Chrissy asked, when lunging circles for the vet judge, do we still keep 2 hands on the line? In the photo, it looks like the handler has only 1, and sometimes line length makes it difficult to keep 2 hands on the lunge. I've only done leisure so far.
Hi, Chrissy. Yes, ma'am. We do suggest that you keep 2 hands on the line, even during the lunge. I can't remember the picture whether that rider did or not in that photo. Now, if you find that the lead rope, okay, in that photo, you're right, it is hard to tell. I think her right hand is holding the tail end of a rope. I'm almost certain. But anyway, if you find that your rope is too short, then you're going to have to kind of, at the moment, you have what you have. You're going to probably have to move and either trot with the horse or move in a small circle inside a larger circle to allow you to keep 2 hands on that rope. Next thing to do would be to then, find yourself a longer lead. You might could even borrow one from somebody else in line. If you get up there and you go, oh crap, I brought the wrong rope. More than once, I've looked to my neighbor and said, I've got my grazing line in my hand. Can I borrow your longer rope? And swapped it out.
Kim, you just got an additional question from Sheila, and she asked, is a stick or whip something that can be used and still two hands on the lead rope?
Hi, Sheila. Yes, ma'am. I routinely use a whip. I don't usually do anything with it much except as an extension of my hand, but I keep it in my right hand. It takes a little bit of practice maybe to become adept at swapping hands when you change circle directions. But yes, ma'am, you can, with a little bit of practice, get quite adept at using the whip in one hand and holding the rope. Okay, is that all the questions, Sarah?
Yes, sir.
All right, and if any of you guys want more elaboration on those questions, afterwards, feel free to reach out to me, okay? Priscilla?
Okay, some general things about equitation. General principles. The main thing is to have a secure and balanced seat. And this is the same principles for any type of riding, whether you're riding a reining horse, in the show ring, or out on the trail. You want to be secure and balanced and a light rider for your horse. And I'll try to give you some tips on how to be a light rider. You want to be easy on the horse and easy on you. Riding should be relaxed and effortless and without stiffness. Stiffness is a real enemy to the rider. It fights against the movement of the horse, and you want to feel secure and be supple so you can go with the movement, whatever that horse is doing, whatever gait it's doing. If it spooks, you want to be able to go with it. And so you need to have that secure feeling. And while I'm thinking about it, I want to point out that the same principles work for riding a gaited horse as they do for riding a trotting horse. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. The secure seat also allows you to have independent hands so that you can be soft and supple and giving with your hands. You don't hold yourself on your horse with your hands. You hold yourself on with your secure, balanced seat. And the secure seat starts with having your pelvis in good vertical alignment, not tipped forward so that you hollow your back, and not tipped back so that you round your back and slouch. You need to have your pelvis vertical, and so you can feel that by rocking back and forth on your seat bones until you find the place where you feel balanced on your seat bones, and you don't have any tension in your abdominal muscles and no tension in your back. Then you want to be relaxed. You want to have flexibility in your leg joints. Your ankles, your knee, and your hips should all be flexible. And so this includes having your legs in the proper position. As you can see in this picture, the shoulder, the hip, and the heel are all lined up. And she has enough bend in her leg. Her stirrups are a good length so that she has flexibility in her knees, ankles, and hips. One of the biggest faults that I see in riders, especially beginning trail riders, is too long of a stirrup so that they're bracing against the stirrups. Their joint is locked, and if your knee is locked, your hip and ankle are locked too. So have that bend, enough bend in your leg so that you have flex in your knee and hip and ankle. And this will also help you avoid getting foot pain, believe it or not, because you won't be pushing down hard on your stirrups like you do when you brace, and you won't be riding on your toes like you will if your stirrups are too long. You don't have to have your heels jammed down real low. See, her foot is just almost level. Her heel is just slightly lower than her toes, but it's enough that you can tell she has flex in her ankle. So that upright pelvis is a real important part of beginning to have the right position in the saddle. You also want to consider your side-to-side balance. And so for one thing, you don't want to lean over and look down at the trail because it really puts you out of balance to the left or right. Think about yourself being the far-sighted member of the team. You're the one that's supposed to be looking down the trail for the bears and the mountain lions and the horse eating plastic bags, you know. The horse is worried about where he's putting his feet, and that's his job. You don't need to look down over his shoulder all the time watching where he's putting his feet. That's his job. So you keep looking down the trail and keep your head up, and this helps keep your upper body vertical and keeps you balanced. Avoid the chair seat. Here we have a good picture of a rider in the chair seat. See how far forward her feet are? He or she, I can't really tell. Anyway, the feet are too far forward. All her weight is on her bottom, on the cantle of the saddle, and her feet are not giving any support at all. So this is not a good, secure, or light seat. The horse is having to work hard to carry the weight of the rider. And it's hard on the horse's loins, it's hard on its muscles. So be sure to get your feet back under your hips so you can distribute the weight through your thighs and through your feet. Okay, here's a rider shown that's off balance to the left. See how the left shoulder is down, the whole left side of the body is collapsed, and you can see that the horse is showing some concern. There's possibly unevenness in the reins. So this rider needs to learn how to straighten her upper body, and there's exercises you can do that will help this, and if we had more time, I'd share some of those with you, but we can do that another time maybe. Okay, posting. This is here we go to talk about gaited horses and trotting horses. Again, you ride a gaited horse the same way you ride a trotting horse, except you don't post. You just ride the trot. But to post properly, you need to think about being light when you post. You don't want to pound your horse when you sit back down in the saddle. Think about posting as moving your pelvis forward and back rather than up and down. As the horse's motion lifts you out of the saddle, let it help you come up and think about your pelvis or your center, whatever you want to think about, going up towards the pommel, and then you sink back down as the gait, the stride progresses. You sink back down, lightly touch the saddle, and let the horse's motion or thrust with his hind foot push you back up again. And when you learn to post correctly, you can do it effortlessly for miles and not get tired, really, believe me, I've done it. You don't grip, you keep your legs relaxed and lots of flex in your joints. Same way with the gaited horse riders, keep that flex in your joints. Your seat bones are going to move with the horse, and you learn your horse's feel, and you just let your pelvis move with the horse, but you keep light. You don't sit back on the cantle like you see a lot of pictures of the show ring gaited horses. You don't push your feet forward and push your bottom back into the cantle. That's not good distance riding position, okay? All right, let me see. Did I cover everything? I think I did. So, we got any questions? Whoops, I just lost my audio. I can't hear anything, so let me see if I can. Okay, I've got the question here written on my screen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Are you hearing me okay? Okay. Okay, now I'm starting to hear you again. Okay. If you don't have mirrors to work with, good ways to know that we are not crooked. Well, it's good to have a friend who can ride with you or watch you ride and give you that feedback. I notice you say you play a lot of tennis, and tennis is one of those sports that develops you more on one side than the other, so it does not complement riding real well. It's good to, golf is another one that's not a good complementary sport to riding because it makes you stronger on one side than the other, and in riding you want to try to be symmetrical, and so you might want to consider some other things you can do that will help you be symmetrical on both sides in your strength and your suppleness. But it is good to have a friend who can watch you ride once in a while and let you know, yeah, you're riding with your, you know, your right shoulder too far forward or your left shoulder slumped. And a good riding instructor can help you with exercises to correct these things too.
Any other questions on equitation? Okay, so we'll roll on to obstacles. That's the next thing we'll talk about. And really quickly, I'll talk about our obstacle challenge. I figure this is a perfect time for us to bring that up. We wanted to introduce this as a way to keep all of you active with your horses, practicing, engaging your horses when you're stuck at home or at your barn, wherever you happen to be. A lot of the stuff, we tried to make sure that these challenges were versatile enough that you could execute them anywhere. You didn't need to have an arena, you don't have to be on the trail, you don't even really need any special materials to make it happen. So we really worked hard to try to make sure that we had a diverse set of challenges for you over the next few months and to make it easy to do at home. So we have the first challenge set rolling, and we've had a really good response with that, which has been exciting. And we're looking forward to judge. Actually, Kim and Jamie are both on the judging panel for the challenges. So one of the things I have been asked already is what we are looking for with the obstacles. And some people have asked for more specific information about the challenges, and they wanted more description about the challenges. So if we ask for a backup, do we want something more specific? Part of the fun of this is keeping it open-ended and not having you in a pigeonhole where you have to do something a certain way. Part of what we like to see is how you choose to execute it, how you work with your horse. There's more than one way to do things. So don't worry about if you didn't do 10 feet of something, or if you thought maybe we needed something more specific on a certain one. We purposely left it open-ended. We purposely left it very broad in the challenges so that we could watch how you chose to execute it and set it up. That's part of the fun. And then that's what this is. This is fun. This is a fun way to learn, and you've got experienced judges that are going to be observing the obstacles. If you haven't already signed up, it's not too late. Even if you want to do the 5-set challenge, we can still get you into that. If not, we've got 4 more challenges that will be coming up, and you can sign up for the monthly challenges. So this activity is going to be open throughout the entire through November. So don't think you're too late to get in on it. We're also doing a mileage challenge, which is also set up virtually as well. So you can always ask for more information about that. One thing about obstacles, whether you're doing it for this challenge or if you're doing it out on the trail for one of our competitions, is how you set your horse up. So there's a couple of things you can look at, and that's how you set your horse up. Anytime you are looking to execute something, you're either setting yourself up for success or setting yourself up to fail. And for example, if you're asked to do a backup, maybe you're asked to back between two trees. One way you can set yourself up more readily is to not set yourself up 15 feet from those trees. Get closer before you position your horse. You're just giving yourself it's kind of like shooting a gun. You're just giving yourself a lot more range to make an error. So make sure that you're setting yourself up closer to the obstacle, and then take time to stop and settle your horse. Think about it. Just go ahead and stop. It seems like it's going really fast when you're there, and that the time seems to just fly by. But really, take a deep breath. You have time to collect yourself, collect your horse. Trust me, that won't take you more than probably 5 seconds. It'll feel like you've sat there for a minute, but you really haven't. So take time to just stop. And you're not just settling your horse, you're settling yourself, because as riders, we become the biggest barrier to success. And that's all usually up in our brains. We get all worked up and we get nervous around the judges. We don't take time to settle ourselves, let alone our horse. And then that's usually when there's issues or problems with communication with the horse. So, control, you should be able to control your horse from every direction, whether it's forward, backwards, laterally, left and right. You want to take stuff one step at a time. I find a lot of folks get in a rush. You really want, the main thing for good execution is to be able to control every footfall that horse makes. And part of that is just taking it one step at a time. And you have to train like that at home as well. So taking one step at a time. And if the horse does more than you ask for it, make it stop. You need to, until it realizes it's connected to you, that you're connected to each other, that takes time, it takes practice. Give and take, particularly on backups. A lot of people just kind of keep a steady pressure on the horse until they give. And there's not a lot of, and then that horse never, has a release from that pressure. And that release from pressure is the reward. So if you want to use that give and take when you're trying to back a horse, and you can use that with anything you're trying to do. It's not just backing. Use give and take. You're rewarding that desirable action that horse has taken for you. And if you're getting frustrated, you're having trouble, just stop. Just stop. Take a break. Go to something that your horse is good at. I realize you can't do that in a competition setting, but when you're at home training, take the time to go back to something that they're really good at, that they know, and then come back to the skill that they're struggling with. There's a lot of ways to set yourself up for success. If you're frustrated, your horse is frustrated, you're not going to get anywhere. I did have a question from Donna about how wide the L should be. How wide should the L be? And I'm assuming that is on the obstacle challenge, our first one. That actually doesn't matter. We don't really care how it's, you just want each side of the L to be approximately 10 feet long. We don't expect you to go out and necessarily measure. You can kind of guess what 10 feet are. We sure won't be trying to measure on the videos. So don't worry about that. Just as long as it's set up in an L, and you have approximately 10 feet on each length of the L, it'll be just fine. Any other questions about obstacles? And not just the obstacle challenge, but just obstacle execution in general? Kristen asked, did you want us to make a physical L with poles or trees or just imaginary? Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter. We can see if you're doing an L. So if you don't have access to trees or poles, we can still see what you are doing. So don't worry about that. We understand not everybody will have access to that. Dawn asked, for the side pass, are we able to do it against a fence or over a pole? Not against a fence, Dawn. I would not, I mean, if you need it for training purposes, you can, but you can use a pole, a tree, whatever you have access to. And then Helen said, if the L backup takes longer than 30 seconds, does it matter? Jesse takes about 40 seconds. No, as long as your video is short enough to actually make it to us. So no, that's fine, Helen. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to more equitation with Jamie.
Probably going up hills and down hills are where we get a lot of questions. How should I do this, and what are the judges are looking for? And I know there's a lot of thoughts out there. What we're looking for is not something that we just made up. It's based on centered riding. A lot of it goes back to military riding with balanced seat and riding so that the horse can do his job the easiest. We want to have our joints flexed so that adds stability and also gives us better freedom of motion. We want to distribute the weight slightly off the saddle, down through the thighs. We don't want to be out of the saddle, and we don't want to be a sack of potatoes on the saddle. And Donna Snyder-Smith made a couple of pictures in particular for learning purposes to show what to strive for in going up a hill. One of the things that's really important is not only as a rider to have good position and balance, but to allow the horse to lengthen his neck, round his back, and get his rear legs under to help push up the hill. The rear legs are the pusher, and the rear legs are the brakes going downhill. Again, Priscilla talked about the stirrups. You want the stirrups to be a length such that the knees and the ankles can flex, helping you with your balance and decreasing fatigue. This rider, you might recognize her, is showing very good uphill form. Her center of gravity is over her heel. Her alignment is good there. You can see that the horse is rounding his back and having a good time going up the hill. The rider is helping the horse, not hindering the horse. This rider's alignment is good, but inhibiting the horse's motion a bit by having the reins a little short, not allowing the horse to extend his neck. And I think a lot of us have found this in competition. It's very hard sometimes to let the horse stretch out his neck to have the most efficient motion. This just takes practice and time and training and time, doing it again and practice so that the horse learns motion and to feel more at ease. I have a letter to the judges in the 1980s that says, our judging has taught riders to be too far out of the saddle. And this is what we see. And we're still seeing this a lot. The old habits die hard. And this rider is, the legs are too far back. It's not supporting himself, too far forward for this climb. Any stumble, the rider would go tumbling off. And this type of form hinders the horse, doesn't help it. Some of these things, when you're judging, it's easier to see in motion than it is in a still picture. And I think you should all be able to appreciate this. Downhills, Kim.
Sorry, I was on mute. Were there any questions on the uphill portion for Jamie? Okay, so what goes up must come down, right? So we spend a lot of time going up and down the hills. And, you know, we often ask why one thing or the other is important. But, you know, riding a light and balanced, protects the horse, keeps him going for longer and longer. Going down those hills light and balanced allows the horse to kind of round, get his hindquarters underneath him, get his hind legs underneath him, and take some stress, strain, and pressure off his front end. If you've ever ridden a horse down a steep hill that goes downhill on his forehand versus one that uses his hindquarters, a light bulb will go on in your head and you'll go, aha, I understand exactly what people are talking about there. So I underlined the words on little notes here. We talked, we got on there unlocked in the joints, and I put not rigid, because so often we see people with their legs, their knees are locked, their hips are locked, their ankles are locked, they're leaning back, and they truly are impeding the horse's ability to work comfortably down the hill. So unlock your joints, relax, keep your shoulders, hips, and ankle in line, just kind of like you would any other time, and with good position. One of the common questions we have oftentimes, is about body sway, which, can occur on a really steep downhill. So you can use counter pressure in the stirrups to help with that. And, oftentimes people will try to train themselves to kind of keep your upper body quiet and let your lower body move with the horse's motion. And that'll correct some body sway. If you look at this picture right here, you'll see this gentleman's position, is really good for this little downhill. His shoulders, hips, and down to his feet and ankles are in really good alignment. And, were the horse not there, he would be landing right on his feet, and he looks nice and light and balanced. One question I do get occasionally, you'll see this gentleman kind of, using his right hand, he's kind of got a light little contact with the horse's mane. Keep yourself in balance. So if it takes steadying yourself a little bit, I don't personally have a problem with that. I'd rather you be light and balanced and safe on that hill than not. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide on that one. All right, here's another downhill. Rider looks familiar again. So, so we got pretty good alignment there. Donna Snyder-Smith, was helpful, made some helpful critiques, and pointed out that maybe the rider's hips could slide back just a little bit and close her hip angle and bring her shoulders slightly forward. But again, she's pretty much in prime position to help that horse down the hill. Well, that's the last slide on that. Okay. But to recap that, unlocked, relaxed, balanced. You set the horse up, for success. You allow him to get down that hill effortlessly, as efficiently as possible, and safe for you and the horse.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any questions for that section. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the mount. And everybody's got to get on their horse, right? Well, yeah, you do. So we want to make sure that you are doing it in a way that is helpful to your horse. It's not so much about the looking pretty, because if it's about how are you impacting your horse every time you climb into the saddle. And we all have our issues, whether it's, we have, some of us have physical issues that make it more difficult to get into the saddle. And that's why we highly encourage, regardless of and I don't care how athletic you are, I don't care how fit you are, it is still better to mount a horse from some type of terrain or mounting block, something to give you an advantage and to do less pull on the saddle, less chance to sit heavily in the saddle once you climb aboard. The main thing is, again, it's just like obstacles. You want to set your horse up. You want to set your horse up really, really well. And part of that is keeping the horse square. If all 4 feet are not squarely on the ground, there's a lot more pulling. The horse can be pulled off balance. It's worse for the horse's spine. And if you don't use terrain or you don't use a mounting block, you're more likely to pull that saddle, which actually can twist the spine and pull on the horse's back. And particularly there, you'll see horses. It's interesting. I actually looked at a study on how mounting affects the horse, and one of the studies had compared horses, and there was a group of horses from a working ranch, and typically, you know, it was the same cowboys that rode the horses every day. They were on and off those horses constantly, whether they were doctoring cattle, opening, whatever. They were moving stuff around, up and off those horses, and they were always mounting from the ground, always mounting from the left side. And all of those horses had issues with spine alignment and twisting of the spine, and it was all towards the direction of where the saddle was being pulled frequently. It was intriguing. And then also you could see how it affected the muscles along the spine and in the loins from that. And so there you have a lot of folks that don't think maybe they need assistance getting on their horse. It's not about assisting you as the rider. You may be able to do it just fine. It's about assisting your horse. It's about doing what's right for your horse. The other thing that we look for, besides mounting in such a way that's beneficial to your horse's physical health, is also just control, it's safety, and making sure that you have light contact. Some folks I've seen just drop those reins down on the horse's neck when they go to mount, and then the next thing you know, as soon as they go to throw a leg over, that horse is stepping off with them, and they're having to pull those reins clear up by their neck practically to get that horse to stop. So you want to always make sure that you have light contact with the horse's mouth, or whether you're using a hack, you just want to make sure you have light contact with that horse, so the horse is aware that, yes, I'm here. Yes, I want you to listen. That way, if that horse does try to take a step, you're able to just lightly check it immediately and nip it in the bud before the horse gets into a habit of stepping off with you. If you look at this picture, I was talking about squaring up the horse. You notice that horse is resting its right hind, and that the horse is more likely to come off balance. I mean, she'd probably be fine. The rider's using excellent terrain, so she probably will have very little pull on that horse. But she could do her horse a favor and herself potentially by making sure that that horse is standing square. So that picture is kind of helpful in that regard. It's about quickness too. You don't want to sit there. Don't dilly-dally. Don't linger. I always say, get on while the getting on is good. That would be my biggest tip for everybody. Get on while the getting on is good. Any questions about the mount? Or what judges are looking for? Okay, there's no questions. Kim. Oh, never mind, sorry. Carrie asked, any tips and tricks for your cold mount? I'm sure
Okay, yeah, had to get my mute button again too. Okay.
I would say she could be referring to just about anything, because I like to do a morning mount with folks. I mean, everybody's got to get on their horse, and actually I've found that the more that they do, sometimes the more horses are around, and they actually do better because they stand and are looking around. But the cold mount, it can be a little more challenging some days if it's really cold. But my tip is get on and ride your horse before you come do your judge mount. Warm them up. Warm up your horse. Warm up their brains. Get them thinking about something else. All right. No other questions? Kim, go ahead.
I think Priscilla's doing trail care.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Priscilla.
Okay. Trail care. Yes, this is one of the things I like to judge, try to judge. You don't always get a lot of opportunity, but there are some things I definitely look for. To me, trail care means total care of your horse, not just out on the trail. And there's evidence of your care by how your horse is groomed, how it's shod or trimmed. It should be proper, balanced hooves and so forth. I always look at your trim job, the nutritional state of the horse, that it's not too fat or too skinny, and the overall fitness of the horse are all things that I like to look at, because that tells me a little bit about how you care for your horse. Proper fit of tack comes under this category, I think, so that you don't cause rubs or soreness in your horse. Those breast collars should be fitted properly. Cruppers especially need to be fitted properly. And of course, your girth and your saddle fit are important too. Care at the pulse and respiration checks. I like to see a pulse and respiration check at a ride if I get a chance to, and watch how the riders take care of their horses to help their recoveries. Loosen the cinch or girth, and don't forget to tighten it back up afterwards, of course. Sponging the horse with water when it's hot, but even when it's just a little warm. If that horse has been working pretty good out there on the trail, it's warmed up, its muscles are warm, and it's putting off a lot of heat, and it might need a little help cooling down to get its pulse down, and its respirations too. So if you carry a sponge, you can carry a water bottle, you can wet your sponge and dampen the horse's neck, shoulders, face, legs, and the evaporation will help cool it off. If it's really hot, it's a good idea to carry an extra water bottle or two and just pour that water on your horse, let it warm up, and then scrape it off. And this will help your horse cool faster. Another thing you can do is carry something to fan the horse with. Moving air really helps cool it. Some of you less experienced riders, if you will take note of the open riders, you'll see a lot of them carrying something like a dustpan tied to their saddle, or a frisbee, or some kind of a folding fan that they can use to fan their horse at the P&Rs. So these are just little tips. Of course, if it's a really cold ride, we don't have very many of those, but sometimes you might want to have a rump rug rolled up behind your saddle so you can unroll it and cover that horse's hindquarters so that it doesn't get those muscles, those big heavy muscles, chilled if you're out riding in a cold rain or cold wind or really cold temperatures. Okay, let's see. The most important thing of all is your care of the horse at the end of the ride. So this is something we check when we do stable check, is to see how you've cared for that horse. You want to make that horse comfortable. As soon as you get in from the ride, remove the tack as soon as you can. Some people like to leave the saddle on for 10 minutes or so to let the horse's back cool down naturally, and that's okay, but that horse wants that tack off as soon as possible. And clean his feet, have hay and water ready as soon as he gets to the trailer, so he doesn't have to wait for a drink or something to eat, because he's probably going to be hungry. Don't mess with him a whole lot though. Get him comfortable quickly, then you go rest a while and let that horse rest for a little while. Then take them for a walk maybe after they've rested a while. If grazing is available around camp, it's a good idea to let them graze a little. In my opinion, this is the best way for them to get electrolytes, is to get some good green grass. Anyway, blanket only if it's really chilly or windy. Fly sheets I think are really good, or coolers if they have come in from the ride hot. Grain them only after they're well rested and well cooled down. Give them a good grooming then after they're rested, and maybe a massage, and walk them again before bedtime. Those are good ways to care for your horse at the end of the ride. But he's going to be happiest with just having a good nap, probably. Okay, any questions?
There's no questions posted, Priscilla.
Okay.
Okay, on to our last couple of topics here. Trail safety and courtesy. Trail safety, that's a really broad topic, and you know that could be a whole discussion in and of itself. So the best thing I say on general trail safety is know your horse and know yourself. Don't get into unduly dangerous situations and take chances. As far as trail safety and courtesy, that can be summed up as, treat other folks on the trail like you wanted to be treated yourself. So be courteous of other folks. Don't crowd their horses. Ask permission about passing. If you do pass somebody, then go on. Don't pass and then slow right back down. Go on and get out of the way. That would be discourteous just to get right back in front. If you're at an obstacle, an observation, by all means, ask the people behind you, do you need them to wait? Or if not, then proceed on down the trail. But you've done the courteous thing and asked. I know there are a few new people on here, so I will say as far as safety issues, if either one of us judges are asking you to do something on the trail or watching something, when I said know your horse, if you feel that you're uncomfortable, you're not sure if it's safe, or you're just unsure or uncomfortable, wave at me and say, Mr. Kim, I'm really uncomfortable trying this. Can I just pass on this? And I'm going to tell you, by all means, please do. You know your horse best. And there's always opportunity to train later and another ride to try again. Stabling, there's no one size fits all because there's lots of different kind of rigs, okay? Priscilla's already touched on the idea that, we need a safe, comfortable place for your horse to relax after he's worked for you hard all day. So you need to be supplying him with plenty of water, plenty of hay, and hay. They like that hay to munch on, so don't forget that. The other chief safety factor is obviously if you're tying to a trailer, your tie rope, the length, whether you have a safety knot or a panic snap, you need to have a safe tie situation, whatever your rig will allow. And that's how I judge trailer safety is, because I know not everybody has the exact same setup. So I look to see if the rope is at a proper secure length. Is there a way to quickly get the horse undone if the need arises? And depending on how long after the rider has been in camp, I'm really critical of the hay and water. If you've been in a good while, that horse should not have an empty bucket or empty hay net. If you've just been there a few minutes and haven't had time to top everything off, I can understand. Otherwise, your job is to take care of that horsey. All right, that's the short version on those two. We're trying to keep it to the hour length, and we've gone slightly over. Do I have any questions about trail safety, courtesy, or stabling? Sarah?
There's no questions posted right now, Kim.
Okay. Well, I want to.
Could I add something?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Priscilla. Could I add something real quick? I noticed in the picture the horse is wearing a web halter, and I really like to see that. I do not think it is a good idea to tie horses in rope halters. If the horse does get in trouble, get its leg over the rope, or get the rope caught on the trailer somehow, a rope halter can really injure a horse's poll or its nose if they get to pulling or fighting. So the rope halters are great for training and control when you're lunging and things like that, but for overnight stabling, I really prefer to see a nylon web halter or a leather halter. Just my opinion.
I agree with you, Priscilla. And I usually will, if I see, I use rope halters frequently, every day actually myself, but I don't stable with them. And so I will talk to any riders that have them and give them my spiel, which essentially is what you just said, Priscilla, and for those reasons. Okay, anything else?
Kim, Angie said, I sometimes park near a tree to keep my horse from crowding the horse tied to the back, but have been dinged for that. What is your opinion?
Some part close to a tree. I guess I would have to see a graphic exactly what you mean.
Well, there's two horses tied to the trailer, and so she's parking near a tree to keep one horse from crowding the other. So it's kind of it's like it's separating them.
Oh, that's okay. I would have a couple of different answers for that. Partly it would depend on the facility because of, I'm trying to be hyper aware of horses chewing on trees. A lot of public properties we use, that are used heavily have, general public comes in frequently and often. You can see a lot of denuded trees. The bark is eaten off, and the land managers generally frown on that. So that's part of the equation. If that's not an issue, the land managers don't mind or don't specify staying away from trees, and it does not inhibit that horse's freedom of movement otherwise, then I don't have a particular problem with it.
Okay, another question from Chrissy is it okay to tie with a neck collar?
That is within our rules. Yes, ma'am.
I would. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Krim.
I would just say I would highly encourage that you and that horse are well trained and well versed in that before you go experimenting the first time at a ride.
I had a horse that was an escape artist. He could get out of any halter that I put him in at the trailer. And so I would use both a halter and I did use a neck collar as well. I was just very careful to make sure that, how it was secured and to make sure I could get it off easily and quickly if I needed to. I also had the rope to the neck collar tied just slightly longer than the rope on the halter so that he was less likely to, he'd feel the pull pressure from the collar, but I didn't have to necessarily worry about him getting hung up. And it also kept the ropes from getting really twisted with one another. But yes, you can use those. And there are some horses that need them.
Mm-hmm.
Question from Lindsay. She asked, what about using a biothane halter for stabling?
I would say it's okay if it's wide enough and not a real narrow one. It's the width that spreads the pressure, and so that would be okay. And especially some of them I've seen are padded, so that would be extra nice too. But I would say as long as it's not a real, like a little half-inch halter, that would be just about like a rope halter. But a nice wide one would be fine. And it should be fitted well to the horse's head so it's not loose and they can get a foot through it or something like that, and make sure there's nothing on your trailer that the halter can catch on.
There's one final question from Kristen, and she said, going back to on the trail, what are the best ways to keep a horse hydrated besides offering water and grazing? And should we bring beet pulp to feed at PNRs after hydration or things like that?
Okay, a really good trail horse learns to take care of itself on the trail and will drink at every opportunity, but they don't always learn that real fast. So some of them need some help. Yes, offer water at every opportunity, and hopefully they will learn to take advantage of it at every opportunity. If there's good grazing along the trail, by all means, take advantage of that. Don't let your horse learn to make the decision about grazing and just, snake his head down every chance he gets and stop and eat. But you stop and give them the opportunity to graze for just oh, you know, even 30, 45 seconds, they can get several mouthfuls of grass and then go on down the trail. I had a gelding that was real good at trotting down the trail and grabbing a bite and keep on going. He got real good at that, especially if he saw yellow clover. Boy, he would never pass that without grabbing a bite. Anyway, bringing something to the P&Rs, there's pros and cons about this. But yes, if your horse doesn't drink well on the trail, I would say bring in a baggie full of soaked beet pulp with some a little bit of goodies in it, sweet feed or something, so they'll eat it. That can certainly help, and I don't see anything wrong with it. Sometimes the other riders in the lineup get a little peeved because then their horse gets anxious because it's not getting a treat. So it might be best to wait until after you're out of the lineup to give it to your horse before you go on down the trail. But yeah, I think it's a good idea if you need it.
We've got a question from Carrie, and she asked, what is the best way to ride uphill?
What is the best way to ride uphill? Light and balanced. Is there a more specific question?
Carrie, can you clarify your question?
Did she miss the section on riding uphill?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Carrie, can you oh, there we go. Oh, she just, oh yeah, she did miss it. So Carrie will record it. So you will be able to go back and watch this. So yeah, anybody that missed part of this, couldn't get in on the beginning or whatnot, or even if somebody had to leave early, we are recording this webinar so that you will be able to go back and watch it. So Carrie, you'll still have the opportunity to see the section on uphill, and we do have images and photos to help show that a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't want to not answer the question, but we're kind of running long on time here. So, but I would be happy to respond to that privately too afterwards.
Okay. So Jamie, I will put you in touch with Carrie.
Okay, good.
All right. Any other questions before we sign off? All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you to all of the panelists tonight for being a part of this. As I say, this will be recorded, or this has been recorded and will be available. So thank you for joining us, and have a good night.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.